Alright, so this is the Sega Menacer. This is the official light gun for the Sega Genesis. This was released in 1992, the same year as the Super Nintendo's Super Scope. Now I'm not sure which one came out first. I have a feeling that the Super Scope maybe came out just a little bit earlier than the Manacer, but nonetheless they basically came out around the same time, and they're actually very similar in a lot of ways. First off, they're both cordless, so they both require the receiver on top of the TV so that the gun can of course talk wirelessly to the system. Now because they're wireless, they both take batteries. The Super Scope takes 6 AA batteries. Unfortunately, the Manacer takes 6 AAA batteries. Why, Sega? Why would you use AAA batteries? Hardly anyone ever has AAA batteries lying around. And to make it take 6 of them, and they clearly had enough room. The batteries go in the back here, and you know, there's a lot of wasted space here actually. You can actually, it looks like they could have easily cut out the space and made AA's fit. So why would they make it run off AA's? I don't really know. That's my biggest complaint with the gun. And you know, I've used the Super Scopes, and same thing. Having to put 6 batteries in it and plug in the receiver and put the receiver on your TV. I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather just have these light guns have a wire coming out of them. It sure beats using 6 batteries in my opinion, but you know, obviously they were trying to show how high-tech they could go at the time. These guns were very different than the light gun on the NES. The light gun on the NES didn't know where it was pointed at the screen. That sounds ridiculous, you're saying. How can that possibly work? The light gun on the NES only knows if you're hitting a target or if you're not hitting a target. It doesn't know exactly on that target where you hit it, it just knows if you hit the target. And if you haven't hit the target, it doesn't know where on the screen you've hit. It only knows that you haven't hit the target. The Super Scope and the Manacer actually work off the scan line of the television, and through some sort of black magic, it actually knows pretty much exactly where you're pointing it at the screen. So now if the games wanted to, they could actually show a crosshair on the screen that moves around with the gun. You couldn't do that with the older style light guns. And when this came out, Sega claimed that this was the most accurate light gun on the market. Is that true? I don't really know. Is it more accurate than the Super Scope? I don't really know. They both work in a similar fashion. Hey, they both even came with 6 games on a cartridge. Now, there's a lot of little accessories for this thing. Obviously, the rear stock, which goes on like so. The gun is extremely comfortable. They really thought this thing out. Unlike the Super Scope. I never liked the Super Scope in the way that you had to hold it up on your shoulder. It was almost like a RPG or like a bazooka, you had to hold it. I much prefer this. It's almost like you're holding a small submachine gun. It's very comfortable, and it puts the sights pretty much dead on where you can look right down the sights. So this is a much more comfortable design. It's also a little bit smaller than the Super Scope, which was kind of big and cumbersome. And then you also have the optional scope itself. Now, this is a really strange design. You put the scope on the side. Depending if you're right-handed or left-handed, you can adjust it like so. And then this goes on the top back section of the gun, similar to the way the stock went on. Of course, I'm right-handed, so I just did that wrong. But yeah, now you can look right through the scope. And you have a little aiming circle thing here that you can just barely see through. So yeah, I don't know, you might like using the scope. I think I'm just going to try it like this at first and see how it goes. But let's check out this gun in action with the Manacer cartridge that came with it. That's the 6 games that came with it, and let's see how it stacks up to the Super Scope. Alright, so the batteries load in like so. 3 in each side, of course, simply following the directions on the stickers.
Like I said, it takes 6 batteries in total, 6 AAA batteries. And then the cover goes on like so. And then you can put the stock or the scope on. Obviously you can't put the stock on while you're changing the batteries. And there you go, you're ready to go. We've got the game in this case, the JVC XI, and as you can see, plugged into controller port 2 on top of the television is the little receiver. So anyways, let's check this game out. Alright, so as we can see here, Manacer, copyright 1992 Sega. Like I said, this came out in 1992, the same year as the Super Nintendo's Super Scope. And just like the Super Scope, it came with a cartridge with 6 games. Just use the gun to aim at the game you want to play. Now right away, this game shows off exactly what I was talking about. This gun knows not just if you're hitting a target or if you're not hitting a target, it knows where you're pointing at the screen, and it tracks the screen using the scan line of the television. As far as I know, this will only work on a CRT along with the Super Scope 6. They will not work on modern LCDs, which do not have scan lines. They work in progressive, obviously. They don't draw the picture the same way that the old CRTs did, so the guns can't track where they are on the screen. Obviously a very simple game. It's similar to a lot of the games that you saw on the Super Scope 6. So, yeah, let's move on to the next one, shall we? So obviously this game here is, inspired by Sega's own Kojam Earl. And once again, you're firing tomatoes, and we can see the crosshair on the screen as I'm moving the gun. It's very accurate, I must say. I mean, I know you can't tell in the video, but that crosshair is pretty much dead on with where my crosshairs of the gun are actually lining up as I pointed at the screen, so it is very accurate. The next game here, as you can see, pretty much standard fare, shooting at the military tanks and planes and helicopters. You can use a secondary shot in this game to shoot like a bigger gun. There's 3 extra buttons on the Manacer. I didn't show that off very well in the first part. But there's your main trigger on the handle and on the rear handle where you'd normally hold the pistol or the gun. And there's 3 extra buttons on the far side on the secondary handle further away. Another strange game. I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. Once I ran out of power, I didn't realize that you have to actually, kind of like the old arcade games where you have to shoot the bottom of the screen to get your to reload in a way. Here you have to actually aim the cursor down at the power thing that says power at the bottom part of the screen to refill your power. So yeah, it took me a minute to figure that one out. And here's another game that really just shows off the fact that this is tracking on the screen. You know what? It's almost like a Wiimote. Using it in this game is almost like you're using a Wiimote or a PlayStation Move, which once again is just tracking the movement. In that case, using infrared and tracking the movement, but in this case, going off the TV's scan line. And like I said, it really is like using a Wiimote. It really was ahead of its time in that regard. You have to admit, the possibilities they could have done with things that track the TV's movement, maybe in the form of a gun or maybe in the form of a handheld remote, it could have been done back in 1992, as you can see here. So, once again, pretty cool little game, just showing off the accuracy of the gun, really, more than anything. And the final game here is pretty much just a generic shooting game, shooting targets. Now, one thing you'll notice in these games is the colors are very horrible. Even you anti-Genesis fans are probably laughing at the color palette in these games. That's because it's harder for the gun to track the scan lines of the TV if there's too many colors on the TV. Okay, the gun's very sensitive. Even if your TV's not bright enough, the gun will tell you. Well, the Sega Genesis, the game will tell you. It'll come up on the screen and actually tell you on the screen, you need to turn the brightness up on your TV. The Super Scope was the same way. In games that used the Super Scope, I remember like Terminator 2, the arcade game, you got really awesome graphics, full color graphics when you played it with the controller or with the mouse. But when you used the Super Scope, it went into low color graphics mode. So once again, these games require lower color use to help the gun be able to see the screen. So that's, I guess, really the only downfall to these. The way that these two guns worked is that there was a downgrade in the graphics when you were using them. Other than that, it's pretty awesome, and I just thought I'd show you that. So there you go. See you guys later.